Coding cannot be your only skill anymore. It can be one of your main skills. It can be something that you enjoy doing. But if you're trying to get into software engineering, there's just no way that is the thing that is going to separate you from everybody else. Maybe if you're in the top like 0.001% and you're one of those people who is programming things that are not well trained on, but especially if you're not working in tech, but you're working in an IT department, coding cannot be your main skill. It's now time to diversify your skill sets to communication, marketing, data architecture, software architecture. If you're one of those people who felt like you were always getting too into the weeds, or you actually enjoyed learning more than actually coding, I think this might be your time to shine. Not 100% sure on that yet, but I could definitely see how now having a broad understanding of many things is going to be more valuable than having a deep understanding of a single thing. Like, you no longer need to be an expert in React. We have an expert in React. It's called Claude Code. But you do need to be an expert in your domain. You need to be an expert in how you put the pieces together. You need to be an expert in designing applications and what your users want, because my experience is that users do not know what they want. They tell you what they want, and then they come back to you for 15 email chains telling you, actually, can we add this? Can we add this? Can we add this? That's definitely one of my weaknesses. I'm pretty good at like listening to what a person says and implementing it, but especially in the professional world, I'm maybe not as good at thinking, oh, you know what, I should just go ahead and add this filter because this user is going to want this filter. So I do think that if you can get ahead of that, if you can give people what they want before they know they want it, that's something that can't be vibe coded. It's something that AI can't do, because AI doesn't know what people want. People know what people want. So I think if you are a product visionary, so to speak, this is your time to shine. I do think that knowing how to code is important. And if I had to learn to code today, I probably wouldn't touch AI from a coding standpoint, just from a teaching standpoint, for like the first 6 months. And if you're like, oh, but I'm gonna fall behind, I don't think you're gonna fall behind. That's how long it used to take to like do something useful in programming when you were learning to code. I mean, I would say it was a year of just learning Python before I did anything that was like multiple files. And I didn't even understand how to like access files. It was, okay, I can figure out if a number is prime. And I was an engineer student at the time, so I would write little Python scripts to help me with engineering homework of, hey, instead of putting in this long formula into my graphing calculator, I can write a little script for putting the parameters in, and then I'll just spit out the answer. So I do things like that, but actually creating like applications that interacted with things outside of your single file, that took like 6 months or more. I mean, it wasn't my main focus, so it took me like a year to actually figure out how to do that. So I don't think it's necessarily, oh no, I'm falling behind, I need to get vibe coding right away. I think you can, if you haven't coded before, you can put your hands, you can put your feet on the brakes, and you can kind of get in the weeds a little bit and figure out, how do I code? And you don't need to worry about creating anything that is productive, because all of us who came before, we weren't making anything productive for the first year. You know, there's some people who might have been, but that's like the rare case. The average person had to learn from scratch, and you still do too. But once you have that basic knowledge base down, now you can run with it. And the speed at which you're expected to produce something of value is so much faster. There's a lot of people in my company who don't know really what is possible yet. And so they think I'm still hand rolling all of my code when I'm not. And it's crazy. Nobody said, oh my gosh, wow, you came up with that so quick. Instead, they look at it and go, yeah, can we actually like rename the fields? And they act like that's the hard part. Like, can we rename a field? Hey, I noticed you put hour block. Can we put the block hour as the field name instead? This was just referring to like a date time field. Not looking at like how the whole application, is it crazy that I wrote the thing in like a day, which would have taken me like a month to write. So I don't think people who aren't in programming are aware of just how long it takes to write software and how much faster we can write. And so you're not going to get that thank you for being faster. You're just literally going to get the email response of what changes need to be made faster. So it's just faster turnaround. And the other thing I noticed about users is they never know when the software is done. There's always something else that can be added. So now it's just that turnaround time is going to be faster. I think what I have learned is that if you finish something, don't necessarily just let your user know that you finished it. This is more like in a corporate environment. Don't just let the person who asked you to, if it's finished, just wait till the end of your sprint. There's no sense in moving fast because generally they're not gonna say, okay, great, this thing is done. Now you get to move on to another project. They're gonna find a little thing to nitpick or add, it's not always nitpicking, and ask you to add that feature. So if you have multiple projects you wanna work on and you finish one thing, don't tell the person that you finished their thing. Just quietly start working on your other thing. I think one thing that AI will allow you to do is take on more projects. Now, I'm not super excited about that because I've never been a great multitasker, but it's definitely something that will now be expected. Like before I could have maybe 2 or 3 projects and do them okay. Now I should be able to take on maybe 5 projects, 6 projects and do them incredibly. So, and that's because the coding is not the thing that is slowing me down. And it never has been the slowest thing, but now it truly isn't the slowest thing. The slowest thing is coming up with the value. What is the value add that you are creating? So I think every time you sit down for a project, right? Like there has always been a gajillion note apps in the world. And you know, like when you get cat hair in your coffee and you just kind of go, oh, well. So yeah, there's a bajillion note apps in the world. And you know what? That's because people were learning. Now there's just gonna be a bajillion more complicated apps in the world. There might be a bajillion, I don't know, like Instagram type applications, but none of them are actually going to be anything of value. They're just going to be ways to learn how to code or how to vibe code. So what's really gonna separate you at this point is, does the vibes of your app, and so I say that in the terms of like actual vibes, is that something people wanna be in? Is that something people wanna use? Is the UX going to be fantastic? Is the data gonna load quickly? How can you separate yourself? And it's not gonna be your code anymore. It's not gonna be how fast can you code, because there's always going to be now a tool that can code a lot faster than you. I will say, if you can code perfectly at like 140 lines per minute, I did work with somebody several years ago who, after they read the documentation, they were basically an LLM. They would read the documentation of something, and then that was it. They then could code without looking at it, and they would churn out stuff faster than an LLM. Looking back on it, their code wasn't great. It got the job done, but it was, you know, 2,000 line functions, lots of duplication. But I always thought it was crazy how fast they could code without having to look at any sort of reference material. And now everybody gets to do that. Now you get to be that 10x developer. Every single person is now a 10x developer. Now, we hear things like 100x developer. I don't know if that's real. I feel like a 100x developer is a 10x developer who's also introducing 10x the number of bugs. But you know, maybe that exists. But every single person can be a 10x developer. You can now come up with an idea, properly design it, and then you can code the thing as fast as some of the best coders, best scripters in the world. Like when you watch a YouTube video and there's a guy, I mean, this is like 5 years ago, you'd watch a YouTube video of a guy, say, coding something, and they just never had to look up anything. They just had all the syntax memorized. They had all the structure memorized. As long as you understand that structure and how your application should be designed, the coding part is now the easiest part. It was already kind of the easiest part, but it is truly the easiest and fastest part. It is not the thing that keeps you from delivering. There are so many times in the past where I got stuck on like a column in a table being too wide, and if I made the column a little bit narrower, it broke the entire UI, and trying to figure out, okay, I'm not great at Tailwind, I'm not great at CSS, how can I do this? And I would just get stuck in the weeds on CSS and Tailwind for so long, and now that's just not an issue. I can now just say, hey, make this column a little narrower and add a filter to the column, and it's done. Those are just like little things that used to take a while that no longer need to. However, Things that are now taking a while are like the more boring thing. They're the thing that is harder to get in kind of a flow state to, and that is the actual problem solving of how is this application going to be valuable to the user? What am I actually building here? And I think maybe the only one kind of risk of vibe coding is that you can move too fast without actually taking a step back and figuring out like, what am I actually building here? So I do think it's important to be mindful of that and to actually step back and, you know, go for a walk, journal, I don't know, like just write down what is your application doing. Now you actually have the time to truly think about those things. And I do think there's still value in typing out the code. It just kind of makes you figure out what your application is doing, how the data is flowing through it, and kind of gives you ideas. A lot of times when I'm trying to solve a problem and I can't figure it out, I'll start typing out an email to a senior dev, and 90% of the time I don't end up needing to send out the email because just typing the email was enough for me to figure it out. So I think that's something that as developers we can now take on, is being the artist, being somebody who takes a step back and just looks at the sky in silence, and maybe something will come to you. And now the area of friction isn't, oh, do I know the syntax of how to implement this? It's the actual idea, and you can now implement those ideas. But the problem is that when it's so simple to implement ideas, filtering out which ones are of actual value. So I think if you can figure that out, if you can figure out what are the areas of value and put those into an application, that's how you're gonna be ahead. You're not gonna be ahead by being great at coding for 90% of the type of developers that I know out there. I'm sure there's still areas of development that I'm not as familiar with that do require expert knowledge, but a lot of what I do is data engineering and CRUD applications. And those things, the actual coding of the application, it's not the hard part. It's the hard part for individuals who don't know how to do it yet, but it's not the hard part when there's already somebody who's done it a gajillion times and there's a ton of documentation on the internet. So at this point, focus on what value is your application bringing and what ideas can you bring to the table that somebody else could not. What do your users want? I think at this point, we are all like Steve Jobs, where he would say, the user doesn't know what they want. We're going to give them what they want. At this point, that's all of us. We now have the power to get a step ahead of our users and to impress them and surprise them and go, oh, you know what? I didn't think about that. That's actually a really great idea. I'm glad that you put that in there. And that's what's gonna separate you. You can no longer be the person who implements. You now have to be the idea guy, and you have to know the domain that you're working in. I think that's the most important part. Can you be an expert in the domain as well as an expert in the technology? Because just being an expert in the technology is, one, not enough, and two, it's just not that impressive anymore. There's already, if you're working on the majority of systems out there, you're just not going to be the expert anymore. An LLM's gonna be the expert. So I think keep that in mind, that your job's not over as a software developer, but your job is changing. And coding is no longer the part that impresses people. It's now, what can you implement that they didn't think of themselves? I think now is the time that you actually get to act like an engineer. You actually get to truly solve problems. The tools there now get to just build the thing. I'm sure there's lots of engineers out there, but I'm not in the engineering world. But if I was like a mechanical engineer and I figured out, oh my gosh, I have figured out how I can solve like transmissions in cars, and I can make transmissions last 20 years by doing this thing. It's just, I don't have the machinery, I don't have the people, I don't have the finances for it. This is obviously a very like stupid example because I don't know anything about cars, but I just know there's mechanical engineers in the world. But like all those bottlenecks that are still there for people in the material world are no longer there for software engineers. So if you can think it, you can do it in a way. You just have to know how to design it. You have to be a master architect and you have to be a master in your domain, and putting those two things together are gonna make you extremely valuable going forward, especially because you'll be able to go at such a fast pace. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm gonna try doing some more long form content. I realized that I had filmed this in vertical, so that's on me. Like and subscribe if you wanna see more long form content, because I've really only stuck to shorts and now I wanna try to branch out of there.